Sarah, I see more than we did when we went to school together on Zoom.
I'd have to agree, Ryan, but that's not a bad thing.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
I'm excited.
I love how engaged you are. So good things ahead for sure. Just
Thanks.
let some others in here. Good to see people engaging this time of year. It's always tricky, so I'm glad I'm doing some of these now. And first of all, I want to say thank you for showing up. There's always the dialogue about recordings, and I'll cover it here, and I'll cover it later on with our group or as we move along. So the funny thing with real estate training is that if you always say that you've got a recording, then people don't show up live, right? Like they don't come to the mastermind or they don't come when you do stuff. They just wait for the recording, which completely defeats the purpose of training and development because so much of um, what can come from a training happens with engagement, right? And so much of what we do is all about that. And so rarely do I record the training and just post it right away. Otherwise, nobody shows up. I might as well like train at 6 in the morning when I'm up on my own and things like that. And so I will look to put some of these playbooks in our digital platform, just not right away. So that's perspective. And people will always say, no, I'm busy. And I challenge that all day long based on productivity and, where people are at. If, you guys can show up and I can show up, then other people can show up. And I know we can't show up to everything and we've got other things on the go, but that's just kind of where.
Classes, mentorship.
So, I'd love to hear in the comments before we get going on this one. One, if you've had any experience with colder forms of prospecting. And two, what you'd like to learn, or, do you have some hesitation around it? Like any kind of comment that, may lend to some of this part of the conversation. So just how to get started. Perfect. Anybody else? What about the idea of like picking up a phone or knocking on a door and calling somebody and how uncomfortable that might be? Scripts, yeah, perfect. Door knocking openers, do not get the door shut in your face right away. Yeah, for sure. Good one, Rebecca. So I will support you on these as well. And we'll jump in. So I'm going to share over my slide. How to help keep conversation going, leads engaged. Right, Nicole. And we'll talk about those more in our skill gaps as well. But everything's a lead, whether it's your sphere of influence, whether it's the database, things like that. I'm going to record on here as well. And when we look at leads in essence, it's really about just looking at a lead for not what the real estate, wording usually is like an online lead, but it's really about a lead meaning what comes first. So cold leads mean that they didn't really come first. We usually had to go out and find them, but they are still a lead. And so I will slide over here. Get into this again. Oops. There we go. Okay, so this is a playbook. Cold prospecting is something that I've certainly done in the course of my career. I've certainly found it very, very lucrative at times when I've done it. I have watched agents inside of the realty firm that have come into the organization and literally earned multiple six figures from cold prospecting alone, whether they were cold calling or door knocking. Okay, cold calling or door knocking. That's really what we're talking about today as far as powerhouse prospecting. Different than online lead generation, which we've covered off a little bit already. Online leads are more of a warm lead because they've actually raised their hand and identified that they're thinking about buying or selling real estate, or they've expressed some form of interest and registered their information. So my perspective is that I always preferred the online leads simply because it reduced the time. Okay, the time it takes to generate a lead from prospecting. However, one of the things that I'll say about colder prospecting is that you're much more likely to target a listing lead. Okay, online leads, yes, I just had a call from one of our members of the lead machine. She's going to a buy sell this morning. So there's both. But online leads tend to get more of a buyer type of lead on average, where if you're colder prospecting, you're tending to go after a listing lead, which I far prefer listings, but I never preferred the time it took to do it. Okay. The thing about this business is that if you're going to generate more, you're going to either spend time or money. Pick your poison. Okay, like there's no way around it. We're either going to spend the time to work our sphere of influence in our database and do open houses and things like that, or we're going to spend money on marketing, on branding, on flyers, on all the stuff that can generate business like online leads or things like that. Time or money. You can weave the two together, but you can't do zero. One of the two have to happen. So this is really what I reference for the dynamic of colder prospecting. It was interesting when I got into real estate that I was, as most of you know, or all of you know, I started off at Remax Center City. And the year that I started there was a fellow that was a year behind, or sorry, a year ahead of me. He had gotten in for a year, and it's a great story. He had gotten into the business for a year, and he had another job where he was managing like a plant or something to that effect, which would take him about 3 months of the year. And he was strapped for money, like financial despair kind of thing. He made a decent living from his other career, but he certainly needed more to support his kids and I think university at the time, things like that. And he decided that he was either going to give it one more shot the year that I got into the business, or he was going to be out of the business entirely. And he went and he took a training platform and hired a coach. And the coach was part of the Mike Ferry organization. Mike Ferry, not Tom Ferry, who you guys probably see a lot more of online. Mike Ferry, who is arguably among the top 5 to 10 real estate coaches of all time and has this massive organization, the Mike Ferry organization. And Mike Ferry was very, very much about cold prospecting, okay? Door knocking, cold calling, FISBOs, and they, in the US, expired, okay? So we know that we can't target expired listings, even though agents still do. It's against the rules to target an expired listing, but there's ways that if you're doing certain marketing that you just happen to land on expired listings, which is a whole other strategy, and I'm not going to get into too much of that today. Anyways, this fellow took this training platform, and in his first year doing this coaching, he generated over $300,000. Second year, he was closer to 500. And I think within 3 or 4 years of being in the business, he had hit $1 million per year business. He went on to switch to another brokerage, started up his own sub brokerage mini franchise, and then he went on to do a team with EXP. Super dry personality, but very professional. And his name's Wayne Jewell. If you notice him out in the marketplace, you should. He does a ton of business in Dorchester and Thames Center and some of those places. Deals a lot in the luxury market as well. And so I give you that as a point of reference that this is a business that you can change things in a drastic way very quickly. Other stories. I have only ever been cold called to sell my house a couple times since I've been in real estate. One of them is Craig Hansford, and Craig was one of our first agents that signed on at Realty for many years ago, owns his own brokerage now. He called through the city many times on his way to generating business. And when Craig came into the company, he was kind of struggling. He was doing okay, but kind of struggling. He was over at Realty Executives, which is now Street City. Before that, he had been at Oliver and Associates. Came over with Josh Jones, and he just got on the phone and started dialing. And his partner, Josh, was kind of the buyer lead where Craig would work the listings. The other person that's called me to try and sell my house is Jay Dan. And if you don't know Jay in London, Jay speaks very, very broken English. But year after year, as a Mike Ferry coached agent, she generates hundreds of thousands of dollars per year plus. And I'm sure it's plus, plus, plus now. So this type of prospecting, albeit it's not for everybody, it can be for anyone. And that's really something that I want you to think about and consider today as we go through. Just want to make sure here that we've got everybody on, which we do. I went through this little exercise, and I'll make it a little bit quicker this morning. Any of the masterminds that I spend money on to be a part of, I transfer the value that I learn to you guys always. And I was on a session the other night, and there was a really good example. There's two types of people right now, and we're all leaders, okay? Whether we're running a brokerage, running a team, running our family, running a sales business, we're leading. And so the type of leader that shows up right now comes in one of two ways. Either the drama type of leader that we call it, and the drama type of leader is one that always plays the victim, okay? Always plays the victim. And the victim is usually looking for two things. One, the perpetrator, and the perpetrator in this case is often the market. People that are just blaming what's going on in the market and blaming the lack of clients on the market and blaming the stuff that's going on in the US or in politics or the world or whatever for what's going on in their business. And they're always looking for the hero in terms of the hero being somebody to save the day and solve their problems. The drama leader is showing up time and time again, especially with experienced agents right now, because those experienced agents were living high off the hog in a hot, hot market. They didn't really do anything differently to generate that level of business. And when the market shifted and half the homes are selling, their business is tanked. And so what I share with you and what I shared this morning already on our Monday morning Zoom is that your competition right now, no matter what stage of the game you're in, is extremely weak. But that is going to require a ability and a responsibility to make new choices and to own all of our outcomes. And so if you want to win in this market, you have to switch to leading the market yourself in a different way, which is what we call the elite leader. The elite leader takes personal responsibility for all of their outcomes. The elite leader knows how to hold themselves accountable rather than having somebody hold them accountable. But the elite leader never hesitates to reach out for help if they need it. Raising your hand, asking for help is transparency. And transparency to me is the great catalyst to change. Okay. The elite leader also contributes whenever and wherever they can, offering value. Okay. Offering value whenever and wherever they can. And this presentation on prospecting is really just about doing that. And it's really about how to offer value to cold prospects that are going to warm them up so that you can convert them. And so that's what we will lead into today. In cold prospecting, the path is in the math. Okay, the path is in the math. So this is where things become very, very time sensitive if you're going to go down this road. 1 in 25 contacts. So whether you're picking up the phone and dialing a list, which we'll get to in a bit, or whether you're knocking doors, should equal a conversation. And what I'm looking for are conversations that last longer than 2 minutes. Okay, we study that relentlessly now in the Lead Machine platform that we have at the company. 1 in 4 of those conversations should lead to an appointment. Okay, so when you're having a conversation, this should apply really for lead gen as well. But when you're having these conversations, 1 in 4 should lead to an appointment. Of those appointments, 1 in 4 should lead to a contract. And simple math, 1 in 2 homes that are selling, or 1 in 2 buyers that you end up meeting with that buy or stay on the fence should lead to a sale. So really, that's 400 contacts to make a sale. Okay, here's what I know. 400 dials in my system is usually going to take, a good 10 to 12 hours. Okay, maybe 15 hours. We always say to people they should be in our system about 15 hours a week. 400 dials, just dialing like on your own phone, is going to take longer. But you can drastically reduce the time with different tech and tools, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. If you really don't know what to say, you're probably going to have a harder time because you're just not going to have the right conversations. And so you may end up making 1,000 dials, but that's okay. It's a numbers game. And I want you to think about this. If it took you 15 hours to generate enough activity and enough contact and conversation and appointments and things like that to get a deal, you can easily start looking at, well, how much time would it take for me to do 20 deals out of this system? 30 deals out of the system, 50 deals out of the system. Maybe it's just 5, maybe it's 10, whatever it is for you. You can start to engineer this math if you really wanted to go down this road, which is no different than open houses. It's no different than building your list for a sphere of I, and it's no sphere of influence. And it's no different than building through different forms of lead generation platforms as well. My purpose and part of our core process at the company is to really help you get dialed in on what form of business cultivation you want to use, mastering that and adding another one if you want to grow. So again, our core process that we always go back to is foundation, personal and professional. So if you've got an income goal, that's part of your professional foundation. My role is, how do I look at the blueprint to help you get there? Okay, so it's starting to layer in core process. Part of 2 is predictable business cultivation. Most people, based on their income goals, and I'm sure that you must know, the average answer when somebody says, how much money do you want to make in real estate a year? Average answer across all markets is $100,000. Now, I know we have a lot more ambition inside of the realty firm than many other companies. I know our average is usually over 100,000 company-wide. But for the safe number of $100,000, you start looking at what does it take to hit that number by picking 1 or 2, maybe 3 platforms of business cultivation. Most people could crush that number if they just worked their sphere of influence and did some open houses. Like, they could just smash that number if they were super intentional and lined up the right actions with those intentions for those strategies. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes people have resistance to connecting with their sphere. Sometimes people don't want to do opens, but we need to figure out something, right? Nothing happens unless something moves. So we need to figure out something that we're going to be doing on a consistent and regular basis to generate business. Okay, and that then allows us to really focus on our systems, our processes. That's pillar 3. And then if you really want to grow, using tech and other human beings to scale and leverage. That's pillar number 4. 1 and 2 need to be dialed in though. Okay, so this is part of number 2, predictable business cultivation, and looking at the math. This can be a really, really easy form of business cultivation if you just kind of think your way through it. Okay. Most people, like when they're doing open houses, for example, they think, I want a luxury listing to do because that looks really nice. But what they don't think about is that there's less turnover in the luxury market. And this is a numbers game. It's the same with prospecting. It's the same with direct mail marketing. So the reason that I always dominated East London for many years was that those are the areas that I researched and picked that had very, very high turnover, which means just more homes were selling. And if more homes are selling, I have a higher probability that somebody's going to call me off one of my flyers. So if you start looking at this from a numbers perspective with colder prospecting, looking at, yes, the types of homes you'd want to list, but areas that have a higher turnover, you're going to have a drastically better probability of somebody inviting you into their home, even if you cold call or door knock them. So as a reference point, Sarah and I grew up in Byron and Oak Ridge area. And as a kid, I grew up in Byron, and then high school, I went to Oak Ridge and lived in Oak Ridge. And I thought that everybody from those areas was going to know me. And so if I put my marketing into those areas, everybody was going to do business with me. The complete opposite happened. Hardly anybody called me off my flyers when I put my information in there. But when I started putting them into the higher turnover areas of East London, I started to get a lot more phone calls from them. And that improved my credibility, but then I could market that credibility into my sphere of influence. And that started to turn over the people that knew me, liked me, had gone to school with me, things like that. So what we want to look at is high turnover. You also want to be able to position yourself around areas that you have active, pending, or just sold. Okay, active, pending, or just sold. Now you might say, Ryan, I don't have a listing that I just sold. That's okay. Start thinking about it from the brokerage standpoint that the realty firm has listings that are active, pending, or just sold in areas. And you can utilize that listing in the conversation of your prospecting. Okay, so use the MLS system. RE Datum is another tool that somebody can purchase if they wanted to get different types of data. So I was just dropping that on there. Mojo is a dialer, and I'm going to say it's the most popular dialer that somebody could use. So I'm just giving you a little bit of the tech stack stuff with prospecting right now. Mojo dialer would be the most popular. I've used it. We've used it. Many of our members have used it. It'll allow you to plug in a list of numbers, and the list goes into the system using telelisting.net, which you have to buy a yearly membership for, and then plugging in the do not call codes, which you all pay for, and we have the codes on hand at the office. You can then put in a list of homes that match the neighborhood that you want to call. It will scrub against the do not call list, and it will then prepare the list for calling. And through that, it will then start calling, and you have the option to get what's called a 3-line dialer. So the 3-line dialer is dialing out, and it somewhat pauses while you're having conversation, or it continues to dial if you're leaving voicemail or things like that. So it basically takes the efficiency factor to a whole new level that if you really wanted to get into prospecting, and doing it quickly, a dialer is what's going to do it. And a multi-line dialer is how some of these huge cold callers do really, really well by it. So that's a little bit about the tech stack. What you want to look at is usually drilling through a couple hundred calls or doors as quickly as possible for metrics. So I like to have that 200 number in mind. I would say that 200 doors is going to take you, several hours for sure to go through. You can dial them a lot quicker. Again, you start looking at time or money, right? Time means you're out. It's a little hot today for door knocking, but you're out and you're getting face to face with people. Not too many people slam the door in your face. Okay, it's the same thing when people call leads. Like you get the odd, like screw off or get lost or hang-ups, but for the most part, people are pretty decent. Doors tend to be the same, but again, the question always has to come back to how am I going to differentiate from the competition? How am I going to differentiate from the sleazy salespeople? How am I going to differentiate and show value when I'm getting on the phone or going to the door? Okay, so just that mindset to hold. Okay, when you start looking at a list, 2,500 is a good solid number for a total to get started with. I like to find areas, or at least I did with flyers, of no fewer than 4,000, and 8,000 is a good healthy number. So if you were to start to think about the type of prospecting that you want to do and how to really, really get involved in a neighborhood that you want to target that has high turnover with homes that you'd like to list, anywhere from 2,500 to 8,000 would be a good healthy number. Okay. And again, the auto dialer speeds up call times. You can use your current database, SOI, or a lead pond as well with a dialer. I'm talking about prospecting today, though, and we're going to keep focused on the colder stuff. Okay. So picking a target neighborhood would be your first step. Like, where do I want to market to? Where do I want to have presence? And in my mind, I'm going to suggest that if I could do it all over again, I would also look at where are places that I can get involved in the community? Where are places that I can, host events? Where are places that I can, get involved in showcasing businesses, like business spotlights? Where do I shop? Where do I look to do business? Are there places that I would do more business? Just thinking about, that a little bit more, because what happens is you can really, really improve the connectivity of what you're doing with doors or calls, or if you're sending direct mail, by being the person that's all things community connection. Okay, like how do you be the connector of all things in that community? And so this is where we start to look at how can I offer value as well. I'll get to that in a second. Scripts, simple dialogues. Okay, so we will walk through a couple. Hi, my name is your name, and I'm a local real estate agent. We just listed a property a few doors down at the address and like to give neighbors a chance to choose who they live next to. Do you know anybody who might be a good fit for your neighborhood? Again, that's non-intrusive. Okay, it's not are you looking to make a move this year? This is a dialogue that I like. Another one that I like is, hi, it's Ryan from the realty firm. We've been marketing to your neighborhood for many years, and we just sold a house at 123 Main Street. We're going to be in the neighborhood over the next couple of weeks doing free home equity reports, or you could say free market evaluations. Is that something of interest? A third dialogue that you could use. Hi there, it's Ryan from the realty firm. We just listed 123 Main Street, and we find that oftentimes we get a lot of buyers inside of our listings, but they may not be interested in that particular property. So we're just canvassing the neighborhood to see if you know anybody else that might be making a move in 2025. 3 different dialogues that I just gave you. Not one of them says, are you going to move or do you want to sell your house? You could say it on the phone or you could say it at the door. And the reason that I don't say that is because I'm not putting them on the spot. I'm not asking them. I'm asking if they know anybody. There's a drastic psychological difference. Look, at if they're going to be moving, they're going to tell you. Okay, they would volunteer that information. If no, you could also say that you're throwing an open house and love to keep the neighborhood involved. While you're there, you're offering free home equity reports and you're dropping one off, blah, blah, blah. You could ask about time. If they say yes to that, you can then ask about providing market research or confirming that you'll bring that research. These are simple dialogues that don't sell, but you're sitting there offering value. Okay. Now, if you're offering value, you 100% have to bring value. Okay. You can't just say you're going to do it. You need to actually do it. So this is where we look at creating a home equity report from past sales, pendings, and active properties, but give a vague price range to start. Okay. The goal is just to get inside the home at the appointment. I don't like providing an exact value without seeing the home. I don't think that you can truly do that. It's unprofessional. So even when we've done online market evaluations, very, very vague. And the purpose and the intention is always to get to the appointment. Okay, bring different guides that you have, showcase what it is that you do, who you are, a little bit about yourself. Don't make the presentation or even mention the guide. I would just leave that as part of the package. so that they know, oh, Melissa's, very credible and very professional. Look at how nice her marketing is, right? Something tangible goes a long way. You can include a net sheet as well. Now, if you include a net sheet, I like to make sure that I'm going through an actual evaluation and I'm sitting with them at a table, taking through what they'll net, because you know that oftentimes they're just wondering what your commission is. That's really the big net piece to that. But looking at what they paid, interest rates, is there a discharge penalty? Do they have a discharge on a furnace or AC unit or anything like that? These are the things that you can walk people through and showing interest. And in part of that, you're just including a YS or some kind of guide or something to show your marketing, your results, who you are, what you do, where they can find you on other platforms to see your credibility as well. Mindset of the appointment. People like people who like them. Okay. Demographics are one thing, right? About the neighborhood, about their sales, about the stuff. Psychographics trump that all day long. Showing interest, okay? Finding commonality, asking those questions that build that like and trust, walking through a house and seeing that somebody has a soccer team, up there and asking them about soccer, or, seeing that their kids, graduation photos are on a wall and, asking them about what their kids and things like that, like just human to human connection. Okay. You're there to serve, not to sell. It's about their life, their next steps, the things that they're going to accomplish in their own dreams and goals, not just the sale of the property. You're there to be the authority as far as the credible market expert, but it's important that you build that connectivity to get there. Okay. Asking all the questions that we've gone over in all of the sessions on pricing and converting more listings, on motivation, right? The market report, whether it's an evaluation, an equity report, a net sheet, all of this is a doorway. Okay. So I want you to think about that. You've got levels to this as far as the doorway to get into that appointment, but the destination is a signed contract and the real destination is a closed sale. But when you're doing this, having a mindset of contribution, remember those triangles, right? That little diagram that I showed you at the start of this. The more that I contribute, the more that I serve and support other human beings, the more success will just naturally come my way. Like when you hold that mindset versus 99% of every other real estate agent on the planet, or anybody in sales for that matter, watch the floodgates of your business open up. Watch the floodgate of good things in life open up. But I can literally walk through anybody that I see in our roster and outside in the real estate environment that I have a conversation with or I observe on social media, and I can literally pinpoint all about the sale or one looking to contribute. One looking to serve others, one looking to impact somebody's lives. All about the sale, they never do that well. There's the odd exception, usually, along with a lot of misery involved in that, because all those sales don't really ever create fulfillment. Success does not equal fulfillment. It's just a toxic replacement for fulfillment. And we see it all day long, inside and outside of the company. So if you take the approach of serving and supporting other human beings and just contribute, like my mindset is just nonstop. How do I bring value? How do I bring value? How do I bring value? And if you can take just even a small piece of that and start to create that as your mindset, your mantra in all that you do, I can't tell you enough how many good things will unfold if you just attach to that process and become less outcome oriented. Focus on the activity, not the results. The results will come. Again, when you get to the appointment, don't explain it on the doorstep. Okay. You've put together the report. Mind if I step in for 10 to 15 minutes and walk you through it real quickly? And if hesitant, you just stay low key. But you have to share. Like, it would be unprofessional to really give a true value without seeing the house. Most people are going to allow you into the property if they've agreed to give you that report. And I also want you to hold the mindset of confidence too. Because if somebody has said, come over with a report, I would 100% let you know that more often than not, if you just go a little bit further in the conversation, you just ask a few more questions, you just drive a little bit more value. I can't tell you how many times that those people are actually ready to list their property. I would always go with a listing agreement, even if it's just the ability to take an exclusive. Like, never go to that appointment without that paperwork. Because in my own career, the amount of times where somebody said, oh, I'm just looking to do an evaluation or just to get an idea. But when I got there and I sat with them and they literally, looked at the value and looked at, me and some of the questions and things like that, we listed their property on the spot. So come prepared for that too, but just don't expect that. Okay. Mantras to serve. If you serve them well, oftentimes they're going to do something with you then or very soon after. That's the other thing with an evaluation or a home equity report in somebody that's, a little bit colder than somebody that or has maybe volunteered the information. And I'm sure there's people on this that know this. How many times do somebody say, well, I need to think about it, right? And if you're not like a hardcore closer, I'm not. Like, I really don't really sit there and say like, well, no, you need to sign this document. I don't care who it is on the planet. I think that's crazy. I certainly would never allow it, in my own home. So why would I do that in somebody else's home? But when you look at these numbers and things like that, as far as the conversion times, how many times do you deliver value? Somebody says, I want to think about it. You can literally be on the car ride home and somebody calls you and says, we just talked about it. We'd like you to come back and list the house. And in their mind, we go, what a pain in the ass, because now I've got to go back and I made plans. But how great it is that that actually happened. Sometimes people just need to think or take a breather, or it's their own process as far as, having a discussion. They may have a family rule that we discuss everything together in private before making a decision. Right? So knowing some of this stuff with people that you don't know is important. Right? Not getting bent out of shape if they don't list their property right on the spot with you. But giving them that value that they can consider you as an option, and hopefully giving enough value that you are the obvious choice for who they're going to do business with if they list their home. I always used a dialogue that if somebody is saying, we're kind of on the fence at a listing appointment or an evaluation, it doesn't matter to me whether it's 6 days, 6 months, or 6 years from now. I just want to be an obvious choice when you decide to list your property. Keep it light, right? I mean, if they're really, really talking and they indicate that they're going to be doing something, that's where you might push a little bit harder, right? You may look to convert at the table a little bit more so than you normally would. So that is something to consider, okay? Use a psychographic equation as far as 3 questions that are about them versus the home. Like, go deeper with the people before the numbers. I must sound like a broken record right now, but who's going to win in this market? Who's going to win in the market with the rapid pace of AI? The person that markets themselves and builds their own personal brand within a brand. The person that takes their connections and goes deeper, and the person that delivers more value to the marketplace than anybody else. Those 3 things will allow you to win. So take these connections deeper as well. The deeper the connection, the higher probability of conversion. Okay? Sample questions. How long have you been in the home? What made you buy it back then? What would you change if you could? What would your ideal home look like? If you could wave a magic wand, would you stay here or would you move? Right? You got to remember there's a lot of people right now that have concerns about finance. A lot of people right now that don't know if they could sell or not, or they are paying off some other bills and they may just want to find the equity. But there's a lot of those people too that when they realize what's what, they can't sell. They're either going to have to do a refi. Maybe that lines up business with your trusted mortgage broker for refi referrals, and then they're sending you somebody else. Or maybe some folks are realizing that they are in a tough spot and they need to sell their property. And so being that guide to them in whatever form that they are or place that they're at is very, very important. Again, building rapport, match their energy with your tone and pacing. Learn how to mirror communication. Okay, use their name often, be less transaction. Adjust your energy to make them feel understood. And that's a great response to a lot of times when people say something that you don't agree with. I understand. I understand your perspective. Okay, having that information as far as, just some simple one-liners. I understand your perspective. Acknowledging what matters to them. I understand that you want $900,000 for your property, and you recognize that, that might be a little bit on the high side in what's gone on in the market. I understand that. My goal is to look at this from all different angles. Use you language more than I language for anybody that's on the buyer conversion value proposition script. Think about the psychological language, and that the same thing applies here. What I can do for you is send you a daily list of all the properties that match exactly what you are looking for. I only said I once, right? I said you 3 times. Observe and compliment with depth. Ask permission if you can find out more information. Okay, would it be okay if we, took a look at some bills to see, just where your mortgage is at? Would it be reasonable to take a look at that furnace contract that you seem to have? Because sometimes there's a discharge penalty. Asking for permission. Use humor, but only when it's appropriate. This to me is a serious matter. You can build rapport, but I don't want to be the joke of the situation or the conversation here. And always end with gratitude and future framing. Gratitude, thank you for having me into your home. Would it be okay if I followed up with you by Wednesday of next week? Okay, future framing. Framing out when the conversation continues, not just leaving it where it's done then. Okay, future framing is very important. When you're talking about pricing, you can ask this question: do you want a price based on emotion or the facts that we just covered? Okay, if you're going through that evaluation, using a price range, not an exact number. We can look at these dialogues and you can see that this lines up just like my convert more listings sessions as well, because I'm giving them 3 values. I call it a fire sale number, but it's a sell fast number. Okay, the really, really low number. The sell number to me is fair market value. Okay, fair market value. And the test price is the might not sell number. Okay, you can choose your wording accordingly. But I like fire sale, fair market value, and test price. And then going through, like we talked about in all of the presentations that we do on pricing, pros and cons of what way to go about this. Follow up, monthly market and equity update. Okay, remember, just like anything, the key is in the follow up. Automate it with your follow up boss or whatever CRM you're using and some CMA tools. You can manually update it and send it, or do something with your system. Sample script would be, hey, I ran your numbers on the updated equity. Looks like you're up 17,000 in the last 90 days. Want me to send the newest report? That's just something of value. That's just keeping in the loop. Keeping good communication. A lot of people are watching equity closely right now. Let me know if you'd like me to walk you through some options. That's a dialogue that you'll see in a lot of our posting on our sales stuff, that a lot of people have questions about the current market. Just want to keep people in the loop of what's going on with interest rates, equity, things like that. If you have any questions, please let us know. Call every 30 to 90 days. Keep it casual and value driven. Just checking in. Just checking in to see if your real estate plans changed. Would you like an updated report? If the perfect opportunity came up, do you want me to keep you in the loop? Like, these are just simple questions. I don't think that in the 45 minutes that we've been spending here that I've gone into anything that has been about you need to sell your house or please buy or sell with me, right? You'll never hear me do that. But yet we see the messaging online from most agents that that's exactly what they're saying. And look at their business. It's mediocre to average at best. Okay, you can have the credibility stuff. You can have the call to action, the CTA to do business, but you've got to put way more of the emotional connection first, and then way more of the lifestyle, way more of the value or the educational or the inspirational before you have those calls to action. And so we went 45 minutes on numbers, on leadership, on conversion, on the dialogue. What questions do we have? We must have some questions. Is it that quite a group today? Dave's jumping on, I see him. Anybody? Dave, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me, Ryan? Sorry. Can you hear me now?
You can.
Yeah, so my question around the door knocking piece, and I don't know, maybe it's more in depth than what we want to cover here today, but I mean, I know that in my experience with door knocking, it's not just a knock and then hope for the best, right? I mean, it is the strategy more like I'm focused on this area. Like I know a lot of people may want to do things like door hangers, printed material. I guess my philosophy on it is always that you have to commit to that area, like the farming of the area.
Yeah.
And if you're going to knock today, like you need to be back in that area more and more, and they need to get to know you, right? And I think when I was newer in the business, yeah, like I knew where quarterly. Okay, like so after the initial door knock, like is there a follow up pattern or a prescribed plan that you would suggest
I
in
think
terms
you'll
of what
see
to
this.
do next? Because I find that that's kind of.
I think you'll see this. I think that you see it happen in a number of different ways. Oh, there's some feedback there. What I would say is that you're going to have some people that just flyer, right? Whether they're paying Canada Post or they're dropping off flyers. You can pay me to just drop off flyers all day long. Like I would pay Canada Post to do this for myself, right? Canada Post is no joke as an investment if you're getting into flyers. That's a whole other, playbook. But what I look at is if I could do my flyers differently than I had over the years, I would do the flyers, but then it would be the quarterly door knock or a quarterly phone call or maybe like two of each. And I would literally be like figuring out what is going on in the community and being that person that's like the connector of all things community. A really good study, if you were to look at our markets and areas, Rob Sanderson. Rob Sanderson dominated and still does Ilderton and anything up north of the city for many years. Same flyer for over a decade. And Rob had that flyer going, and he did this massive townwide party in Ilderton where he hired a band and like everything else and was just that guy, right? Like he was the guy in Ilderton. And if you look at other areas, there's many, many places that you could probably do that. It's just if you're going to put in the time. So there's kind of two ways to look at it. I'm going to play the big numbers game. So my old broker, Carl, he was a big flyer guy. I didn't learn a lot from him, but I know that he did a lot of flyers and he did a lot of East London and further east. His numbers game that he said is that if he could go back in his career and do it all over again, he would just have blanket flyered the whole city, right? So we've had agents that have come in. Craig Hansford would be one. Mark Maines for a while was doing it. They just called everybody. Like they didn't make it neighborhood specific or whatever. And they just played the numbers game that if they make a certain amount of calls, it's just going to keep coming up. Now, Craig built a database of like thousands of people that said they'd be listing their homes over time. It took him a few years to, cultivate and aggregate that data. But he went through the whole list of London phone numbers in a few years, several times. That's one way to look at it. The second way is picking a neighborhood or picking a certain amount of homes. And if you're going to do that, you're going to compound your activity inside of that neighborhood, right? So to me, it's 4 times a year, plus becoming somehow the pillar of the community if you do that. So that's the second approach. The third approach is being ultra niche. And when I say ultra niche, a friend of mine named Michael Parsons, he did a interview with us for one of our masterminds many years ago. Michael, I think he's with LePage still, LePage or Remax. Goran knows him, Melissa. He at one point had the highest recorded sale price on the MLS. And I think it was to the tune of, I don't know what the math is, but I know his commission was over a couple mil. And this is like 20 years ago now. All through door knocking luxury neighborhoods. But the difference with him was that the information that he would prep in advance of as far as knowing anything and everything about the house, knowing their names, like knowing the exact, dynamic of who they are, when they might be moving, what their demographic, might be that they'd be moving to, and going with a very specific conversation in mind to like luxury. That was very, very a niched approach to it. I don't think that approach is quite as relevant now just based on the information that everyone has available to them. But wow, like he did millions of dollars in commissions a year, like through that approach, because he'd find the neighborhoods where there were developers and there were builders and there were, the who's who as far as, finance goes or doctors or like whatever. And he knew anything and everything about them, like the true market expert, as far as the neighborhood expert, that he could walk up and have any conversation he wanted because he just had so much information and good data with him. So 3 different approaches. I like the one in between. Smaller neighborhood that maybe you add on flyers, especially when you're making money, right? Like if you're making some bucks and you're already door knocking, if you can compound that with flyers, well, now there's another touch. If you like the neighborhood and you're in the neighborhood, maybe you're getting into a place where you can, build that connection with doing a community event, or you're, being hyper local or things like that. Friend of mine, she's done a mastermind and some events for us, Sarah Kelke, which some of you might follow online. She's out in the Edmonton area, and her whole thing was something called Walkable Edmonton. So she went super hyper local and created like an own website and a whole campaign on anywhere and everywhere that you could walk in Edmonton, Alberta. Like, so it would be like walkable Old South or walkable South London, and then like showcasing all those businesses and all the stuff and all the features. First of mind, becoming the expert, branding yourself that way. You could walk every door in that neighborhood if you wanted to knock on them and say, hey, I own Walkable Edmonton. I'm just getting some information from local people. Do you have any, questions about the community or blah, 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 right? Like there's so many different ways that you can go about this. So it's figuring out, if you want to go down this road, which way would work for you. My whole thing with this is the time. Okay, the time that it takes. And so when I think about everybody on here, it's not to say that anybody here could not do this. But when I go back to responsibility, if I were to say to myself, could I do a lot more with my sphere of influence and tap into one other platform, whether it was lead gen or open houses, would that allow me to hit my income goal? And so too often I find that many people want to become the master of everything, but they really don't master anything. So I would be looking at, if I was just setting a standard goal for myself, I'm going to earn $100,000 in the next 3 months or 6 months. Let's say 6 months by the end of the year, right? And I'm going to do it by this. And I'm just going to commit to that. I'm going to make it work no matter what. So if it's open houses, I know that I'm doing 4 per weekend to start. And I'm going to start figuring out how many buyers am I getting. And after 30 days, I'm testing and measuring that. I'm going to be reaching out to my database. And if I'm reaching out to my database, I'm going to be asking myself, am I really getting intentional with these calls? Like, am I asking for referrals? Am I providing them with value? Am I doing the things that I really need to do to generate business with this, or am I going through the motions? I'm getting into live lead gen. Am I just going through the motions of making dials and not even waiting, for somebody to pick up the phone, but I'm trying to, make it look like the system works? Or am I really getting intentional on what I know needs to happen? And if I know what needs to happen and I know what I want to experience, and I know if I just do these things, but if I'm not doing it, it doesn't matter what it is. That is something that is probably based on what I'm going to say is your foundation as far as personal development goes and what's really getting in the way. And so instead of going, yeah, I'm going to make 100 grand, but I'm going to do lead gen and I'm going to do social media and I'm going to start cold calling and I'm going to do some open houses, like master one. Give me 30 days of the highest level of activity possible of one of these things that I've gone over in the last 7 or 8 days. And then let's talk about what to add on next. Because I guarantee there's some answers in that mystery if you're not getting results. It's no different than me. Like I can run Indeed ads for agent recruiting. I'm doing that right now. I've had callers for agent attraction. But if I'm not willing to do the reps myself, why not? Like I'm avoiding a couple different bills each month. And if I'm just putting in a little bit of time to have better conversations with the people that I want to invite into the business, that gets me a way better result than just going through the motions with something else. Like we are all in this. When I say we're all in this from a leadership perspective, we are. And we're all selling something. Right? Who's my ideal avatar? Real estate agents that want to create a better experience to sell more real estate and people that want to sell their real estate. Right? It's no different. We are all selling or we are recruiting somebody. Right? We're recruiting clients into our space. But the mindset is we've got to do the action. And it's just picking one or two. This can work for anybody. It's just a matter of whether or not you really want it to work for you. But this is a long game. Long game, but what I love about it, you're driving for listings. Driving for listings. And buyers will come out of it too. Any other questions? I got 2 minutes. Okay, my friends, hopefully you found that beneficial. Running out of spring playbooks as we roll into July. But when we explore what's next, or if you need additional support, you just reach out and I will keep doing some things and then we'll be launching into more into the fall as well. But we'll break other things down along the way. No problem. Have a super day.